You are listening to Leading the Factory Forward with your host, Lynn Friest. We share interviews with manufacturing experts and strategies for embracing the digital future, recruiting a new workforce, finding new business. Lynn is an advanced manufacturing strategist and leadership consultant who is on a mission to show manufacturing leaders how to improve their current operations while preparing for a digital future. And here's your host, Lynn Friest.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Leading the Factory Forward. This episode is number 88, and it's on becoming an entrepreneur with Trivinia Barber. On Leading the Factory Forward, my goal is to help you create a compelling future for yourself, your teams, and your organizations. I always encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode and use that as a tool to capture notes as you explore the ideas of this episode. Or to help you get started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes, please download the free worksheet, 3 Steps You Need for a More Productive Workday. Well, this episode is a little different. I'll be talking with Trivinia Barber about her transition to her own business, but also on how her business helps other entrepreneurs. Trivinia is a real-world business development pro. She helps entrepreneurs scale their business, sharpen their leadership, and build great teams. In 2012, she founded her company, Priority VA, now one of the world's leading virtual staffing agencies, because most businesses operate at the expense of the owner's sanity. Her answer is, build teams you can trust. Trivinia also hosts her own top-ranked podcast, Diary of a Doer, and links to that will be provided in the show notes. So some of the questions we're going to explore with her today are, what were the mindset changes she needed to make as she transitioned herself, and now that she helps other leaders make? How did she determine how her expertise might fit a customer's needs? In other words, how did she decide she had something she could sell? What new skills, technology or otherwise, did she have to develop as she started her own business and now as she helps others start their business? What type of people helped her on her journey? And finally, how did she actually practice and develop her needed skills as she went and moved forward with building her company? So once again, we welcome Trivinia. Well, again, we're welcoming Trivinia Barber here today. And so I'd like to start off the show with Trivinia. Tell us a little about yourself, your business, and your journey.
Oh, Lynn, thanks for having me here. So I'm Trivinia Barber. I'm the founder of a company called Priority VA, and I am on a mission to help create leaders that don't do it alone. And I do that by placing executives with executive assistants to help them get out of the weeds and focus on the things they were created to do.
Great. As you think about that whole idea, what are some of the mindset changes either you yourself did when you started or the mindset changes you have to help these executives get through?
There are so many, Lynn. I feel like I have been in a master class of growing up and being an entrepreneur. So I think some of the mindset changes I had to make personally were that failure is okay, right? I was so opposed to failure that I wouldn't try some things unless I was sure it was going to be successful. So I had to learn that I could make mistakes and that it actually worked to my advantage to try and fail and learn and iterate. So that was probably a huge lesson for me early on. And then as I grew, another lesson I had to come to terms with was that working hard didn't always mean success, right? A 14-hour day didn't necessarily breed more results than a 6-hour day with a great night's sleep, right? And I think that's something that carries into the clients that we work with as well. They're constantly sort of in this mindset that I'll just do it. It's not going to get done right if I don't do it myself, right? And so they're just working longer hours or more inefficiently because they haven't made that mindset switch that they don't have to be the one who does all of the things.
Yeah, and certainly from my experience, again, as an executive and in corporate life, you weren't rewarded for making mistakes. So you basically didn't act until you were 99% sure there wasn't going to be a mistake. And that's a big switch when you move to doing something on your own. It's that 40 years of hesitancy to not make the mistake is tough to switch.
It is. You've got to undo a lot of thinking. And really, as a leader of a team now, I've had to also ingrain in my team after I learned the lesson myself that no, it's okay. And we're going to mess up. There's going to be spilled milk. And if we anticipate that, then it's less jarring when it happens. It's like, all right, what do I learn from that? Right? Michael Hyatt is famous for saying, there's a blog post in here somewhere, right? Even if we fail or even if we have a misstep, we can learn from that and go on. And that was hard for me.
Sure. Another thing you mentioned with working with leaders and VAs, what I found personally is that there's a lot of things I do kind of poorly that others do much better than I can ever learn to do. And I don't want to spend the time learning to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time outside of our wheelhouse, right? I think that there are things we do in life and especially in business that we don't want to do. I hate numbers, Lynn. I can't stand them. Data just makes me want to gouge my eyes out. But I'm also a CEO, so I have to pay attention to the numbers, right? Then there's things that we do that we just don't know how to do. I didn't know how to put a Facebook pixel on my website. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I don't have any desire to learn how to do that. And then there's stuff that we actually probably enjoy doing, but we don't have time to do. For me, this is like social media. I enjoy engaging on social media, but it's always on the back burner because I have more pressing things to do. But what we fail to realize that there are some things that only we can do. And that's what we need to focus on. If we can sort of think of a racehorse, right? Put blinders on and just focus on the things that only we can do that require our face, our expertise, our knowledge, then it helps us just have a different outlook on how we're using the resources around us.
Sure. Well, and I think of two, in particular, my audience that's coming off a long career and has some expertise. They have to have kind of two mindsets. One, they have to own their expertise, but two, then they have to have the mind of a novice, for all these other skills that they don't have at this point.
Yeah, I just did a podcast on my own podcast, Diary of a Doer, that talked about imposter syndrome. And I mentioned that too. You can have decades worth of work experience and deep-seated knowledge and then get into a new arena and be like, I don't know if I can do this, right? And so, yeah, especially as we're growing up and as we're learning new things and as technology is changing so rapidly, we are all beginners again in some way.
Yeah. So another thing is for, again, people leaving corporate life, going out and promoting themselves as a service. And your experience, how did you, hey, here's my skill, my special magic. How do I describe that to people that, it's not just telling them I had this position or I had this job title. How do you actually share what your experience is in terms of what a customer will buy?
Yeah, for me, I had to stumble upon this, right? I often used to say that I was the accidental entrepreneur because I didn't ever start out, I'm going to make $1 million or I'm going to have this many clients. That wasn't my focus. I just wanted to help people, which I think is a great way to look at things. But here's what I realized. I worked in medicine for doctors for a really long time as an executive assistant. And as part of my role, I would onboard physicians into medical practices, right? I would say, this doctor with this skill is going to do really well at this hospital in this culture. And really, that gave me an opportunity to do the exact same thing for executive assistants in companies, right? People didn't care if they had Trivinia, the executive assistant. They just wanted someone on their team they could trust. And so the entrepreneurial light bulbs went off for me thinking, oh, I can use this expertise that I had and sort of seeing through the smoke and mirrors that, sometimes people could put up and asking hard questions to see what is it that they really are looking for as far as a client is concerned. How do they show up and who are they going to deal best with? And that's when I was like, I actually do have some knowledge here that I can use. And so for me, it was realizing, what do I already have that I would do naturally anyway in a conversation with someone, at a coffee shop? I'm just a natural talker, clearly, and a natural coach to say, oh, what have you thought about this or have you done this? And that really turned into expertise that I realized could fit a need in the marketplace. And hence Priority VA was born.
So in particular with your business, I assume you have to sell the idea of having a VA to people. And, what was in general, some of the things that you thought about is how do I sell this idea to people?
Yeah. So I'm not necessarily selling an idea more than I'm selling time. That's all I'm giving back to people, and helping them realize the value of their time was really what was helping push people over the edge. I have this Post-it note on my computer that says, do I have to do this? Right. And it's a really good indicator for people. We're doing so many things throughout the day, especially in our business, that we have no business doing, or we don't have to be the one pushing the buttons, writing the blog post, making that phone call, right? It could be done by someone else. And so that's what I've got to sell people on, is the idea that they don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. I think of, say, somebody has an expertise in logistics or something like that. Again, it's the same idea. They would sell to a company, I'm going to save you time because I know how to answer the questions around logistics or whatever the specialty might be. And I think, again, not necessarily the huge companies, but the small, medium-sized companies, they may need 25 skill sets, but they can't hire 25 people. So today's world, things like a VA or some other person on part-time can really be a valuable thing for them.
Yeah. And if we'll just realize the results that we're trying to get people to. So for the person in logistics or the company who needs 25 different skill sets and can't afford it, if we can have 1 or 5 people that can get us to that result, it might take a little longer, right? But that's, I think, something that we need to start looking at instead of not taking action because we can't take the action we think we need to take.
Well, and I think, and I've talked to you, but I've also talked to many other entrepreneurs. And it's interesting when they say team, and most of these people aren't full-time, but they have a wide set of skill sets that they'll engage people for fractional time, I guess. So I assume you've had a similar experience.
Absolutely. When I first started, I was hiring contractors for 5 hours a week because that's all I could afford, doing a variety of things. Some would help me with content. Others would help me with the website. I didn't know WordPress when I started all of this, right? And so I had to hire people to help me backfill the stuff I didn't know so that it would buy me time again, so that I could learn it, but still keep moving on with getting the things done that I needed. There's so many skills that I had to learn as a new entrepreneur and that I'm still learning, obviously, today.
It's a constantly changing field there.
It is.
When you think of people who are entrepreneurs that maybe you've helped, what are some of the examples of the skill sets you would say that a person coming out of corporate America, starting a company of one, what are some of the skill sets they should consider?
Yeah, for me, I personally had to learn financial acumen. I had no idea. Wasn't required for doing P&Ls and insurance and taxes and all of that stuff. I recommend everyone read the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. I think that gives you a really good, solid foundation to help you understand where your resources should go, how you can actually pay yourself first instead of just pouring everything back into the business and sort of starving yourself. So that's for sure my number one go-to recommendation. And then I had to learn things like CRMs. I didn't know what a CRM was. I had no idea those types of things and sales funnels and marketing stuff. I had to understand and start to put together what helping looked like to actually make money from helping. I had this idea that I could support people. I didn't know the 87 steps it was going to take to be able to learn those things. And so for me, it looked like I had to join masterminds. I had to hire specialists, not generalists, right? So that I could really drill down into the details to learn the finer things of this internet marketing business that I'm now a part of.
You mentioned interesting there with masterminds. Again, I've been part of masterminds for many years now, but that would appear to me to be a key thing to help you in your development, developing with others, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, there's the quote that's like, you're the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And no offense to anyone in my circle, but everyone that I knew was more kind of blue collar labor, right? My mom was a housekeeper. My dad was a drywaller. I didn't have anyone that had business experience. And so if I wanted to play in these circles, I had to inject myself around people that knew more than I did. And it was a beautiful opportunity for me to see what was possible because I didn't even know what I didn't know. And I think a mastermind, a coaching program, things like that, open your eyes to this world. You had no idea, whether it's tools and software or mindset thinking, methodologies that you could use. Masterminds are a go-to way to grow exponentially.
Yeah. And I think, again, with my audience of people who've been in executive life, a lot of things have been decided for them there, but now all of a sudden that they have to make decisions, it helps to have a group, I guess, stumbling through this together kind of a thing.
Yeah, that sounding board is always really interesting. I have a friend of mine who owns a mountain biking company. And there are things that I learned about how he treats his customers in his mountain biking company that I have brought into my virtual staffing company. Very weird, but I never would have known that had I not been in this mastermind.
Another thing that occurs to me and that I've experienced is you need to set aside time for whether you call it intentional practice or deep work. And I think, again, like you say, when we're focused on the 87 things we have to do today, that becomes a bit of a challenge. And it probably was in the corporate life too. You were in execution mode pretty much all the time, but now you got to set aside time for some deep work.
Yeah, my podcast is aptly named Diary of a Doer for this exact reason, right? We become such doers in our business that we don't get to step back and be a visionary and be a thinker and to start to learn how we can take our business to the next level because we're just constantly head down, grind. And I am learning to be against this hustle mentality, right? That we have to just keep going. And so for me, my best advice for people is to create a morning routine. And I know you hear all of this stuff all the time that you should have, journal time or quiet time or whatever. And I used to think it was the biggest BS story, but it's so true. Things as simple as A, making your bed every morning, B, having some intentional time to just process and I call it a brain dump in the morning of every thought that's on my mind, whether that's I forgot to fill out the kid's permission slip or, I need to buy a new pair of shoes for my youngest daughter because her feet are growing. Getting that stuff out of your brain then allows for that creative thinking that needs to come that's going to help you scale. And it wasn't until I got incredibly intentional about doing that and setting up that morning routine that the ideas started flowing. My stress levels, even literally my heart rate went down, right? I would wake up with all this anxiety all the time, constantly grab my phone first, right? And go through and see sort of what problems I was going to come into as the day started. And it wasn't until I gave myself my alone time that the stress levels released. And honestly, I had better ideas to kind of pull me out of the funk.
Sure. Again, the hard-charging executives think the mindfulness stuff gets a kind of woo-woo. But I've also just was recently rereading a book called The Corporate Athlete, where they talked about how, one, it's wealth of information, but a particular story in there said they found that pro tennis players who are most successful, they could do a recovery in just the few seconds between points by intentionally going through a short routine. And so I know I've tried myself and tried to share with people I talk with that it doesn't have to be hours on a mountaintop all alone. It's these routines in the morning or even short things like 3 deep breaths during the day, can really have more of an impact than you might think.
Yeah, I read this book called Stress Less, Accomplish More. And that book was all about meditation. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is some woo. Now I'm going to have to be on a yoga mat. And I'm going to, and I just thought, no, I'm not interested. But I forced myself to continue I listen to audiobooks, listening to the whole book. And I'm like, I'm going to try this. And the first couple of weeks, it was clunky. And I thought, oh, this is goofy. My thoughts are just racing. And then sure enough, holy cow, I am stressing less, right? And there's something to be said for breathing. Lynn, I didn't realize how much I didn't know how to breathe until I started breathing exercises. And look up 4x4 breathing. If you guys are listening, I don't care how old you are or what your experience is like. If you will learn to breathe, you can control your emotions, your stress, your heart rate, so much more. So definitely breathing. I'm a huge advocate now.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting in these things where these ideas are thousands of years old, but sometimes we have forgotten them over time. So another thing that occurs to me is when you move forward, how do you make those decisions between, I'm going to pursue developing this skill for myself, or, it's just not my zone of genius. I need to just have somebody do it.
Well, circle back to the WordPress thing, right? I at first thought I had to know all the things about WordPress because I was writing the blogs, so I needed to learn how to put them up. And then it kind of dawned on me, is that the highest and best use of my time? Is figuring out where to do the end thing and how to bold stuff. Oh my gosh, it just makes me want to gouge my eyes out. And so for me, it looks like, how is my time better spent? If I'm doing an hour-long podcast, which could potentially reach thousands of people, or I'm spending an hour doing, code on a blog post that might not get seen by anyone. It's crazy to me. And so we just have to start valuing our own time in a different way and realizing where can we make the most impact. And for me, if I pay somebody the 5 minutes to upload that blog post, it takes them because they know what they're doing. That is a way better use of my resources and time. And so I think we just have to audit what we're doing. And clients hate it when I say that, Lynn. They're like, oh, come on, I don't have time to write down what I'm doing. But if they would be intentional about it, even for a few days, it's almost as if their needs pop off the paper quickly and they can start to see, oh my gosh, it is all the admin stuff, or it's all the tech stuff, or it's the financial details that are bogging me down. Then you know who to hire and what you need to have done.
Yeah. Well, and I always remember, and this shows my age, but in the last century, I went to one of the first seminars by David Allen. It was an in-person one. And he had us during that seminar, he'd pause every hour and we'd say, write down everything that's on your mind. Just keep writing it down. And that was always instructive because then at the end, he said, okay, how many people feel less stressed now that they've taken all this stuff out of their head and put it on paper? So this whole idea of writing things down can be pretty powerful, I think.
Yeah. And I think we get to decide, right? Am I going to do this? Am I going to delegate it? Or am I deleting this, right? That's how I do inbox management. Honestly, it's the most simplistic way. But I think there are so many things that, if you wait long enough, sometimes it's not a problem anymore. And that's a problem in and of itself. But there are definitely tools and methodologies that we can use to help us get rid of that overwhelm that we have about what's on our plate if we would just simply take the time to focus on it for a few minutes.
Well, Trivinia, I'd like to also give a chance to talk about what people should consider to hire a VA, your business. What kind of things, again, is these corporate executives, they launch themselves on their own. When should they call you? Immediately?
Well, first, let me say thank you so much for giving me the platform to be able to talk about what we do. It means a lot to me. Like I said at the beginning, I am on a mission to help create leaders that don't do it alone. I think for so long, especially many executives who've been at this for a long time, maybe they're at sort of their second career that they're doing, they've gotten used to the fact that they can do it all by themselves. And so here's what I'd consider for your audience. An executive assistant can absolutely be life-changing. They can take care of the things that you don't want to do or don't have time to do. So you can focus on what you were created to do. I don't care if you use Priority VA. That is not as important to me as it is that you get help from somewhere, right? I firmly believe don't do it alone, whether it is life or business. But an executive assistant with Priority VA can help you take care of your email, your calendar, your projects, your life, right? They take care of you so that you can take care of business. And if any of you are in that spot where you feel like you need help anywhere from 10 to 30 hours a week, or you want a direct hire placement, then we can definitely help you do that.
Great. And I'm a testimonial. I've been using your service for many years now, and it's truly been a life changer for me. And I appreciate you and Maggie's work that actually helps me. So any final thoughts as we wrap up here today?
Yeah, I think that as we're looking into this, silver entrepreneurship and realizing that, things are going to keep changing and we have to keep adapting. I've taken the Strength Finder assessment, and my number one strength is responsibility and number 34 is adaptability. How I'm doing this, I have no idea, but we need to continue to be adaptable. And what that means in my world is to get help and to raise your hand and say, it is time for me to not be in a silo and keep doing this alone. So reach out if I can help you. Continue, obviously, to follow Lynn and his tips and how he can support you. And just don't be afraid. You've got this.
Thanks again, Trivinia. Again, my deepest thanks to Trivinia for sharing her wisdom and knowledge and her various perspectives, not only on her journey, but how she's now helping others make that journey herself. And again, just as a recap, we talked about these ideas. What were the mindset changes she needed to make? How did she determine how her expertise might fit a customer's needs? What new skills, technology or otherwise, did she have to develop? And what type of people helped her on her journey? Then finally, how did she actually practice and develop her needed skills? So again, I encourage you to take notes and follow the information that Trivinia shared with us. So what's up next? And again, we're going to continue to have episodes. A lot of them right now will be around the entrepreneurship, particularly the solo entrepreneurship. Soon, I'm going to be talking even more about the encore careers, or what I've called the silver entrepreneur. And finally, I always encourage you to visit my website, download the summary at the bottom of the podcast, and use that to help explore these ideas for yourself, or to help you get started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes. Please download the free worksheet, 3 Steps You Need for a More Productive Workday. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.